Hello, everyone, and welcome to our February book club discussion of The Vibrant Years with Sonali Dev. We are beyond excited, and we know that you guys are too, because we've seen all your posts and all your messages, and we are just thrilled for this discussion. So, I'm Lisa Harrison, for those that might not know, and I'm here with my beautiful co host, Brenda.
Hi.
And we are ready to get the show going. So, Brenda, do you want to introduce our special guest?
Yes, I am delighted to. I'm so excited to introduce our author for this month's read, The Vibrant Years, and that's Sonali Dev. She's a USA Today best-selling author who writes hilarious and heartwarming stories about families without boundaries. Her novels have been named Best Books of the Year by Library Journal, NPR, The Washington Post, and Kirkus. She has won the American Library Association's Award for Best in Genre, the RT Reviewer Choice Award, multiple RT Seals of Excellence, has been a Rita finalist, and has been listed for the Dublin Literary Award. She lives in Chicagoland with her husband and 3 visiting children. Welcome, Sonali. So excited to have you here.
Hi,
and what for
everyone.
you is this morning?
Yes, I'm calling in from India, and it is 5:30 a.m. and I'm incredibly excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And one thing I also wanted to mention from your bio is that The Vibrant Years, if you didn't know, is also the very first book in Mindy Kaling's new imprint. So that's very exciting as well, if you didn't see that little logo on the image that came up. So welcome, welcome. Book club members, we're live now, so be sure to put any additional questions for Sonali in the chat. And as you know, we're spoiler free until 7:15, which is unusual for some of these discussions that we get to discuss spoilers. So we'll discuss spoilers after 7:15, but that leaves us lots of time to get into details of this fabulous read. But before we launch into the discussion, Lisa has a question to kick us off.
I do. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have, for the Friends in Fiction Book Club, we have a reading challenge for 2023. And for September, our reading prompt is a Jane Austen retelling. And I have to say that your books, like Incense and Sensibility, Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, and the Emma Project, were a big inspiration for this prompt. So can you share with our members how Jane Austen has inspired you?
Absolutely. So I read her really young. I was in middle school. I was probably in 6th grade or 7th grade when there was, amazingly a retelling. There was a TV show back when, there was 1 hour of TV and not 7,000, streaming channels. And there was a retelling, and it was in Hindi. And I remember starting to watch it, and the main protagonist, who was a woman, basically had opinions, didn't pander to the aunties and society, didn't pander to men just to be liked, wasn't focused on, only on getting married. It was all these things that I believed about myself and the world that I wasn't seeing, in stories around me. And I was like, what is this thing? And and female characters wanted things, they got them instead of ending up dead or depressed, or and so their self-worth was actually, it paid off. So it was happy stories where things happened for women that I had never seen around me in the books that I was growing up with and the stories I was growing up with. So I went out and I checked Pride and Prejudice out at my library and at my school library, and I was hooked. It completely changed my life. It made it okay to be who I was naturally, because stories reinforce, what we believe about the world in a way I think nothing else can. And so I have I kind of blame Jane Austen for who I am. It's not just being a reader. And, so in fact, when my husband and I fight or anything, I'm like, take it up with Jane. So it's a very intrinsic connection. And that kind of is So I always knew I was going to, in my head, when I was very young, I was already translating those stories into my world. And so I was already doing the direct retellings. So I knew when I started taking my writing seriously that I was going to do a little bit more with it, because those are not, my Rajesh series is not a scene by scene retelling. What it is a thematic retelling. It is what mattered to me, the lessons I learned in story form.
That is amazing. And we're so thankful for that, because your books are just inspirational to so many people. And we wanted to pick a good prompt, and that's been a very popular one. People are looking forward to September. So I think a lot of our book club members will be reading multiple books by you, or
some of your books.
some of them. So we
Thank
wanted
you.
to
Because a lot of
definitely bring
people,
that up.
yeah, a lot of people read more than one book for the prompt as well. So I'm sure they'll be getting those out. Well, Sonali, could you tell us, now that we've kind of talked about the influence of Jane Austen, could you tell us more, in case we have people watching who have not read the book yet, could you give us a summary of The Vibrant Years?
Absolutely. So it is, again, my stories are generally, seated in something that I want to talk about, something that, has either bothered me or I want to explore. And I have a 21-year-old. I was very close to my grandmother's growing up. My mother is 75. And so it's this life in which I'm incredibly close to these women whose world is in, reality, history. Life has been so entirely different, because when you think about how our grandmothers and even my generation of women, I just turned 50, how we found how we found romantic love and how we found life partners or how we dated. And when you look at what's happening today, it's just a whole different universe, right? I mean, I can't even imagine my grandmother. She died before apps and and dating apps, and even just before the Tinders and the Hinges. And I don't think she would have believed it. Like, it would have been impossible. And so I think it's a really great snapshot of how far women have come, how very much our lives have changed, but how very, very much how we look for love and how we look for companionship or any of that, how that has just entirely, it's a paradigm shift. And so I wanted to kind of write a story that trapped all the humor, but also all the history and existential growth that women have seen over the years. And so this is a story of three women, three generations of women, a hot grandmother who was widowed almost 30 years ago, a mom who is a recent divorcee, and a young nerdy tech genius scientist granddaughter who is writing an app. And she gets talked into writing a dating app, and she has never dated. And so she pulls in her mother and her grandmother to research existing dating apps. So that's basically the setup.
Oh, that's great. That's a great summary. And we're going to unpack some of those separate components, like the generations of women and the dating app and all of that, because there's several really great points in there. I just have to tell you, when I was reading this book, Sonali, it was funny, it was fierce, it was foodtastic, it was female empowering. It was just a joy to read. So I'm very excited to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to ask you, Shelf Awareness calls you not only one of the best, but one of the bravest romance novelists writing today. I wonder if you could expand on that. I just think that's so powerful.
It is very meaningful to me, which is obviously why it's in my bio. I like to joke and say that that probably just translates to stupid. but also but also naive, because I think that often in this business, there's a market, sales is incredibly important, the pressure for all of that is really, really high. And so there is some tendency, especially when my first book came out, there was almost no other there was almost no trade paperback or print romance with, you know that was entirely, there was two people of color falling in love. There was very little. There was, of course, there was Beverly Jenkins, Brenda Jackson. There was almost nothing that was pure contemporary romance with two Indian American characters. And so there was, there was this belief that there is no space for that, there's no readership for that. So it's really hard today to wrap your head around how, once you've come far, it becomes really hard to see what it used to be. Just like the female journey, what it was like for our grandmothers, it almost, we forget, right? We forget that women couldn't get credit cards, I think, what, like 40 years ago, without their husbands signing off on it.
70s.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So it's, it's that we've come that far, but we forget once we've come that far. And so that's how publishing was. And so there was, that it was easy to believe in thinking in terms of what does everyone want to read, what will sell, things like that. And I have always written stories that have spoken to me and believed, believe that what they will do is what they will do. And so often some of those stories are like, I cannot believe you wrote that. And my first book was a true rom-com, although a Bollywood affair, although there were very serious themes. The main protagonist was, was a child bride. She had been married off really young, although it's take that and then make, think of a traditional rom-com. It's a funny, highly romantic, romp with that at its base. And so I went from this traditional rom-com really to writing some books where I have, I wrote a book. That particular line from Shelf Awareness came when I wrote A Change of Heart, in which a doctor without borders couple who of physicians, the guy sees his wife being murdered in, she chances upon an organ black market, and 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 she's warned to back off, and she doesn't, and she's murdered before his eyes. And 2 years later, a woman shows up when he has completely lost his live to his will to live, and shows up and says, I have your wife's heart in a transplant, and she is sending me messages from the other side, and she wants you to help me find her killers. So it was this really dark tale that I wrote after I wrote this rom-com. And I think that that's what the reviewer said, is like, have you basically, are you not afraid? And so I think that's, I have always told stories I want, and I think that's what it means. And I hold on to it when I start to feel, because the world is what it is. And when I start to, when it becomes hard to, keep believing in my work, that's a line that really helps me, because I think we have to tell stories that, A, we want to, and B, that don't pander to current ways of thinking alone.
Yeah. Well, that definitely comes through in your writing and with your characters. I have to say, I want to be Bindu when I grow up.
Me too.
Loved her so much. So much. So thank you for that little insight.
Oh,
thank you. Me too.
Funny.
I want to be, I want to be Bindu when I grow up.
I've grown up and I'm not Bindu, but I wish Bindu what I wish I was. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm really curious. We ask our readers in advance questions that they would like to ask you. And one of them, Edie Cohen, would like to know, what is it about the dynamic of multi-generational women that intrigues us so much in every culture? And certainly that's, your book is steeped in that. I don't know that you can speak to every culture, but certainly you can, the dynamic is very powerful.
It absolutely is. I think, it's I love the line that youth is wasted on the young, because that's kind of the basis of life. By the time we realize who we are and what we can do with our lives and ourselves, and how little opinion matters, and how much how much importance we give as we're growing up. By the time we realize all of that, the youth is gone, and now we have all this wisdom. And I think that being, that existing in multicultural space, this is basically a life. We've Unfortunately, we have we've created this society where it's become easy to separate from that. And it has, just the way it's become easy to separate from from people who are outside of our economic experience or our religious experience. It's very easy to bubble and to not and true empathy cannot come unless we've walked a mile in someone's shoes, we've befriended them, they're part of our family, right? But once we do that, I think there's so much insight into our own lives, and our own lives become so much richer. And I think that kind of is what I wanted to play with, that here you are at the, Kali, you're at the start of your life, and you already have built these walls of cynicism and whatever, because it's hard existing in today's world. Probably, I think, for our children, it's harder in ways that, just the exposure, social media, how much information we're dealing with, all of that is like this, you're living in a giant explosion, which wasn't the world before. And how do you navigate that? And, and one of the ways to navigate that is somehow, I think, to be aware of where we've come from, to be aware of the fact that there were other challenges, and, the women before us survived. And I think that's what it's about. Like Bindu and Kali and Ali, just one single generation apart, have these huge internal and external challenges that are completely different from one another. But what it needs to fight them, or what it needs to face them, is the exact same thing. And because they're so open to each other, their own lives become easier, and they matter more. And so that for me is, and I was that way with I will remember things my grandmother has said, today when I'm dealing with things. But I also think about things my daughter says to me and my son says to me, because there is perspectives that, so I learn something every day from my children. And of course, I have learned so much from my mom and my grandma. So it's kind of, that intertwining of thought that just makes your life easier. And it's not for any other reason except that it becomes easy for me to deal with my life. And that's, I think, what's in the book for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I tell you, we have reached our time of spoilers, so we can talk about details now about the book. And I don't know, let's check with Lisa, see if she has something from the chat.
Yes, our chat is exploding with love. Everyone is so excited you're here. And there's so many comments about how funny this book was, how they laughed out loud, how they loved the dates. But one thing that has come up several times is Debbie would like for you to elaborate on the parallels of your own upbringing and those of the characters in your book.
That's, I get asked that a lot, obviously, because, for obvious reasons. But I will say that of all the books that I have ever written, and there's a little bit of, all authors in their books, there certainly is a little bit of me in all my books. And but this is the closest, this is the most autobiographical that any of my books have gotten. And it's Ali, it's not Bindu, but Ali's life. That wanting to do something that isn't easy, that hasn't been done before, that's basically banging your head against, a glass ceiling, that experience, but doing that while existing in a partnership, what that does to your marriage. And I always laugh because anytime that you're talking to a creative or to an artist, one of the things that happens is everybody's like, the Oscar speech, I would like to thank my very supportive spouse And while that is true, it is incredibly hard to be married to someone who's an artist, who is a creative, who's doing something hard. It is not, not an easy thing. It requires a whole different level of, again, understanding, empathy, being able to do the dance of putting yourself first and second, and all the things. So it multiplies marriage, which is already a difficult thing, many times over. And I used to always be, why don't we talk about that? Why don't we say that this is hard? And why don't we say, yes, my husband or my wife or my partner struggles with this, and it makes me struggle, because then I translate it as someone not having faith in me, and then I have to make a journey toward understanding that's not what it's about. So Ali's journey, in fact, my first drafts were, I had to give over. My first drafts were me dealing with stuff. So as that, once I had put that out and I had dealt with my own stuff, and this book really truly changed my life in dealing with my own stuff. Once I had written it, my whole mindset in my own life changed so much in many ways. But having said that, I think once I had done that, I had to then separate myself and say, this is now Ali's story. So then the details of it became Ali's, because obviously my husband didn't leave me and ran off to India. But emotionally, sometimes it felt like he wanted to do things that also felt as important or whatever, and the whole word self-indulgence, which becomes an important thing when you're chasing dreams, things like that. So Ali, I think Bindu is of course much larger than life. She's a combination of a lot of things I've seen growing up, these 30s and 40s and 50s Bollywood stars, and their lives. And I've always kind of thought, living in a time when life for women was so different, whether it was Hollywood or Bollywood, to have these women who navigated that, who stayed larger than life but had to shrink themselves all the time, that whole thing was amazing. So this book is very personal, and I have I have young adult children whose lives I see as so, and in so many ways they're so much more comfortable with who they are, so much more comfortable with being who they are without taking into consideration the world, and yet they're not, and so very personal to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want to read from the chat. We have a comment from Christy Woodson Harvey. She says, hi, Sonali, Brenda, and Lisa. I loved this book. So hi, Christy. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Christy. Well, Sonali, did you have more of a comment, Lisa?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't want to this lag. You segued perfectly into this and actually answered most of it, but I wondered, and I wonder if our readers would like to answer too, which character or love story did you identify with the most for our readers? And for Sonali, which one was most difficult to write?
Oh my gosh. I mean, generally this book was a joy to write. So, I'll just go right out and admit that it was, an absolute utter joy to write. I was struggling a little bit with structure until the Oscar diaries showed up in my mind. And once those had, then the book was then I knew exactly, because I mean, there's you start with this vision inside your heart, and the whole journey of seeing it on the paper is, is fraught, sometimes more than others. These characters were very cooperative. I will say that. But I mean, honestly, I'm just going to say this. I feel like Rishi and Kali and Rishi's relationship is one of the most heartwarming, warming and wonderful things. I just, because of the spoiler version, I don't get to talk about that so much. But I think that, I mean, for me, often I'll go back and read their parts, because I find it, there's just such a lovely kind of freshness of youth to it, but also just finding someone who makes you feel okay in your own skin. That's basically what we're all looking for, right? All the other stuff notwithstanding, you just want to meet someone who makes you feel like everything is going to be okay, that you are perfectly whole and perfect the way you are, and just meeting someone like that and then being able to see it in each other. I just love Rishi, and I love their relationship.
Oh, I did too. And I have to tell you, I was practically screaming as I was reading, don't go in there, tell her first.
I love that. I love the fact that he kind of, yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is we had an advanced question too about the diary. So I wanted to be sure to cover that too, since you mentioned it. You said it, you got the idea, but Molly wants to know if you knew that from the beginning and how did you come up with the idea? She loved the book.
Thank you, Molly. And thank you, Christy. Hi, Christy. I just finished her new book, Summer of Songbirds, and it is so delicious. I cannot wait for everyone to read it. All right. So
She said to thank you for the blurb too. She said to thank you for the blurb.
It was so fun. I read it on the flight, and I was supposed to do other things, and I couldn't put it down, and I read it instead. And I had more. I never finish reading for a blurb like way ahead. Usually I'm like, can I have 2 more days? Because there's so much going on. I finished like a month, and she's like, wow, that was fast. It's like that was very good. All right. So the diary entries were so I knew this history. And structurally, if you write very complicated books, and when you're writing, for me, this book was, all three of them are protagonists, right? And each person's story and history was just as important. And I knew, and there's always an interesting thing with novels about where the story starts and where you enter the story. And obviously the story starts way back, when things happen, when Bindu is 17, and we enter the story at a whole different time. And so I knew this entire history, and I kind of wanted, I was struggling for a long time. I was like, how? I didn't want to just do, regular flashbacks. I didn't want it to be just, all that too, but then Oscar's journal just kind of, again, I was on a plane coming to India. I actually wrote a large part of this book in Goa, where Bindu is from in the book. And
nice.
I actually, yeah, it was incredible because I sat by the beach and wrote. I was there for 10 days, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote on the beach, and it was really incredible. So that, I think, is it was, and it was accidental. I didn't, I already knew Bindu was from Goa and all of that. And this vacation just showed up. I wasn't even supposed to go. And then my parents are like, you want to go to Goa? I was like, oh my God, I'm writing a book in Goa. Yes. And so I just went there and I wrote. But, I think that there is this thing that it's really, there's a component that is magical in writing. And, people phrase it differently. People say characters talk to me, or, I just think of it as magic. You have intentions of what you want to do with your story, and then it's really, really no one can. I mean, I certainly can't articulate where that particular thing comes from. I don't think it's all craft. I think it is some craft and understanding structure. But the fact that I was on that plane, and the Purnama, the first poem, which I absolutely, myself, means a lot again to me. Once that showed up, and then Oscar started to kind of write these diary entries, and it was like, boom. Okay, so that's how the story is going to unfold.
Wow.
Well, I know that's amazing, because I think it is kind of, to us, it seems like magic, who aren't authors. But I'm glad Molly asked that question, because to me, at first it was very mysterious with the journal entries at the beginning, but then I realized it was like an unfurling of the past, just like it did for Bindu, and it just so closely paralleled kind of her experience that I was blown away. It's just great idea.
Thank you. Yes. And then of course, a lot of it is writing. I'm a huge rewriter. So, this is about 1 million words away from what I first wrote, but that, that coming up with it. And then of course the moving around, making sure that, what was happening in the current story and what was unraveling with the, all that is craft, but the basic what comes out, that's certainly magic.
Oh, that's awesome. Lisa, did you have a question from the chat or?
Yes, I do. I have a question from Maria, and she would like to know, do you know anyone who has used dating apps and eventually married that person that they met from a dating app?
I saw an eye roll.
I actually, and books are all these various seeds that kind of, come together. And three of my best, closest friends from childhood are single, in various stages of singleness. And my best friend and I.
Lisa's waving. Me.
Yes,
Dating apps are terrible, I can attest, but okay.
So exactly right. I mean, I have a friend that I talk to every single day, and so much of our conversation, it's not just dating apps, but the current dating scene, right? It is completely different from what things were like, even I think 15 years ago. But I don't know. I've been married for 27 years, so it's been a while. But I have friends, and literally, this was that one situation where I couldn't come up with anything that was more bizarre than what actually happens. So I was like, I can have so much fun with this because there's no limit. What I've written, I have heard far more bizarre things than what I've written. So in terms of comedy and in terms of just having fun with it, there was no limits. Like there was no implausibility. There was no fear of implausibility. And yeah, so I have, unfortunately, I did mine, the pain of people I love very much, those stories, but they were like, write it, put it in there because it's absurd what happens. And and sure enough, so I have never used them, but yeah, I have, everybody, I know so many people who do, but I think the funnier part for me is how people behave when they meet. So it's not even, it's unreal, what has happened there. And yeah, well,
It's
Just
definitely
on that note,
awkward. It's awkward.
on that
for
note,
sure.
I'd like to ask our book club members, which was your favorite date from the book?
Oh, yes. Let us know in the chat.
Mine had to, well, I probably shouldn't say this quickly, but mine had to be the noseless veterinarian.
Me too.
Sniffing
Me
the
too.
dog food. And I was just rolling. It was so funny.
It was so funny.
Let's see what other people say.
Yeah, while you're reading, I have had people who will do the whole, like, smell their pets' farts and kind of think that they can identify. And I'm like, okay, I just love my puppy, but that is, yeah.
I don't do that either. But I will say that the other thing that was hilarious about that scene was when she was up on the table to get away from the iguanas was also hilarious.
Yes. I had so much fun writing those. Oh my God.
Like, how did you do that? Because I mean, I would just be laughing the whole way through.
I do. It's really, this was a book that even when I read it again in, proofread, which is the very end, I think I laughed just as hard. I was tearing up, and my husband is like, "Are you laughing at stuff you wrote yourself?" I'm like, it's so funny. And he was rolling his eyes. But, I mean, to me, it's, I'm a mental 12-year-old sometimes when it comes to humor. And, I mean, it was funny.
You
we
said
had
it
as much
yourself.
fun reading it too. We definitely had as
Yeah.
much fun reading it. And we
Yeah,
have
but you
quite
said-
a few.
Oh,
people
okay,
in the
let's go with.
chat.
Oops, sorry.
Edie says the poop smeller. Michelle agrees, the noseless vet. Debbie says the art date in the park. And Anne said her favorite was the live art statues. Linda says the vet. Mitzi said they were all outlandish and hilarious.
They were.
And yet you said you've heard of things personally more bizarre than what you put in there.
I'm not kidding. I mean, there's completely, there's worse. There's worse, but I had one of my dear friends, Virginia Cantor, who was one of the beta readers. She was like, did you say what is was that steel wool? Like what? It's just like texting me while she read it. She's like, Sonali, steel wool.
Oh my
So I can
goodness.
Oh
never
my
say
gosh.
wool without thinking of pubic hair. So it's really
Oh, and I gotta say, in that scene, the funny thing was the thing that got her away from that situation was someone, grabbing her butt. And I thought, if that's what it took,
because she's trying to prove something. And isn't it like bizarre how far we'll go when we're trying to prove something? It's just like, get out of there. It's
I know,
goodness.
absolutely.
Uh,
Oh goodness, I'm laughing so hard I don't think I can get to the next one.
well, our chat is just, everyone is putting laughing, crying faces. It's just a whole bunch of laughing right now.
my God.
And Susie said the insect meal was hilarious too.
Oh my gosh, it was. That was
Oh my
funny in a whole
gosh.
different way, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Funny and gross.
I mean, I understand that it's important for us to find new food sources and all of that. And people are so serious about that. And like completely, the sensible side of me, I completely get it. I'm glad for the scientists who are working hard at it because we're gonna need it. But man, people get like really serious about that stuff. And it's just like, but they're bugs,
yeah,
I was like,
that camp.
that's
me
where I
just say.
tap out. I tap out with the bugs. I can't do the bugs.
I cannot. I have one of my children is like, mom candied scorpions, and I'm like, oh no, no, not gonna happen, crickets. I'm sure someday, maybe. Right now, not evolved enough.
I'm with you.
Me too. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, I've got to get myself back together. Well, on a more serious note, I wanted to ask you about Bindu and about her struggle with herself through the course of the book. She had buried all of these, memories and this love and this whatever, and then it all came rushing back to the surface. How did you, I guess two questions, how did that play out as a writer? Because the pacing of that must have been really difficult. And also just, she's just a really unbelievably strong character. And how did you find the fortitude to figure her out?
I think it's strangely enough, I think that in your personal history or in the personal history of the women around us, that's not such a stretch. I feel like, especially back when women couldn't be anything, right? You had to be what society told you could be. Every single thing was criticized from, from how we look, from what, and like we've seen this, we've heard this, if you wear lipstick, you're a slut. If you don't care. Everything. You can't get things right at a surface level, but even deeper, right? You couldn't be with who you wanted. You couldn't do what you wanted. You had to constantly put yourself away, and you didn't even realize it because that's how the world was, right? I cannot imagine this was my grandmother was a medical doctor. She, my mom's mom, went to med school in colonial India and, practiced medicine her entire life at a time when women weren't even they were barely finishing. Even finishing high school was, a big thing, because all you were expected across the world to marry, raise children. That was your purpose in life. And so I don't think that it is so rare. I think it is entirely universal. I think every one of us had grandmothers who felt like they put themselves away. Every one of us had moms who felt like they put themselves away because that's just what you do. And it is, I have so many women who are in their 70s and 80s today who have said to my face, if we had a chance, the things we could have done. That is a really, really big regret, and it is entirely universal, which is so heartbreaking, right? And so I think that part of Bindu for me was just how, what I saw growing up in every single woman I knew. And and every one of them dealt with it with quote unquote grace, right? They built great lives, they navigated it, they raised, they tried to raise daughters and children that didn't have the same experience. So to me, this thing where so many of our mothers and grandmothers worked so hard so we could have what they didn't, that is a, in terms of human generosity to do that. Because, and we're told stories where everybody's like, I didn't have it, so why should you? But really, the more, I think, common story I see is, I don't want my daughter, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter to have there is this bafflement. Oh my gosh, you guys, like how, if we had this kind of thing, or just it's too much, because that training is. But I think it's a very, very, to me, it wasn't something I had to go looking for. It was very much something that I had seen in all the women, and I wanted to speak to it. But I think the more important piece for me was the navigation, right? It wasn't pathetic because your conditioning was so strong. It wasn't like you said, oh my gosh, I'm putting away this great, love for myself, this great love in my past. It was just, I want to have a great life. How can I navigate this and have it? Which is, what Bindu does. She says,
Yeah.
that's what she's
Mhm.
told, that, and I think that is fascinating, and I don't think it's rare at all. I think that if you went and had a conversation with an older woman in your life today, I think you will find a Bindu in there, right? In terms of what she could have been, in terms of that moment when she was everything, and then she just had to say, okay, I had this experience, good enough. I'm going to hold on to that, and then I'm going to live a more normal life. And so for me, just getting into that, and for me, like with my mom is really a lot of Bindu, in terms of physicality and all of that, is based on my mom, right? My mom is always been incredibly beautiful, very, very ahead of her times in terms of thought, comfort in her own sexuality. All of that is stuff she naturally had, which was uncommon in moms, growing up in the 80s. I will, 70s, 80s, 90s. So she was a gift in many ways, but she was also very much a product of her time. And so I always kind of, say to her, we just went shopping, I'm here, and we go shopping, and she has the most adorable things that we're buying, and she's like, are you sure I can wear that? And I'm like, mom, come on, but I it's and my daughter will call her and say, Aji, you're like this hot grandma, just wear what you want. So we're navigating this day to day, and yet she will never be, I mean, she is doing this at 75 and 65, and she did not get to do it at 25. She did, but within, so it is, I think it's a very real journey that's reflected in there.
I think that's part of why I say I want to be like Bindu when I grow up, because the confidence that throughout the book, but there was confidence there. And even though some of the things from her past that she buried that came out, it showed what strength that she had and how it would have been different if she had maybe been born at a different time. And it's kind of sad in that way, but at least we did get to see her story. We got to hear her story. So I loved
And it's
her.
so
She was,
great, I love
yeah.
that she and it's not easy for her to come to that conclusion. She comes to that conclusion because of her multi-generational, how open she stays to the later generations. As much as we
Mhm.
stand on their shoulders, we learn so much from our children and grandchildren too. And I think that was what I just loved doing, playing with.
Well, and it's interesting too, how, Bindu was, I guess, completely sort of molded by the generation she was in. And then I see Allie in the story, and she's doing better. She has more choices, but she's still constricted, and she's still experiencing that, how was it said? She didn't get the program because people didn't identify with her or relate to her. And then, of course, Cully being the successful entrepreneur is sort of the, culmination of that. So it was really cool to see the progression in each generation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And it doesn't get easier. I think the thing that was, when we do things so that our children might have better than us, the immediate thing as a parent or as an older, as an older person in society is to say, what more do you want? Like, you literally have everything. Why is this so hard for you? And that too is such is such a limited thing to think, because it doesn't get easier, it gets different. So then, what does that mean in terms of life? So I don't know, I don't have an answer for that.
Oh, this has been, I'm loving this discussion so much.
I feel like I could go on forever, although you're
I know.
probably wanting to go back to sleep.
We do have a question. We've had a couple members mention your writing process and would like to know if you could describe your writing process, and has it changed from your debut novel to now?
Oh boy. So it's very chaotic, but I really like it.
It
I mean,
works.
it does. I think it works for me. It's not the most, I mean, I don't think anyone has a peaceful writing process. That's an oxymoron. But I think what really works for me is really understanding. I have this like weird intangible vision of what the story is going to be at the end. And I have like a line. So there's this 400-page book, something like three generations of Indian women on the, Indian American women on the dating scene at the same time. That's my one line. And then there is this book. And, that's quite a journey, but it's exactly the vision I start, and many a slip, right? I mean, I kind of, it's not, so my true process, I think, is really mulling, and I'm in that phase right now where it's like I feel really guilty for not doing anything, but I have to do a lot of staring and mulling and kind of just in this internal living, filling it up, kind of just opening myself up, closing myself up, like this whole existential crisis thing I do. But once I start, I have to really just, I call it a vomit draft, which is a terrible, terrible metaphor, I realize. But I have to force myself to vomit out a large part of the first draft. And kind of, just that's where a lot of the magic just spurts out. And it happens at different, I mean, there are books in which I will get like 50,000 words down. There are books in which I get like, 30,000 words down. There are, so I also have now developed an intrinsic kind of understand, a gauge for knowing, okay, I'm hitting a wall. Now I need to stop the vomit draft and go back and clean. So it's this whole thing that happens, but I do need to force the story out. My first draft is my hardest. I'm a complete reviser. You can hand me a mess and I know how to fix it. And I, again, that sounds terribly immodest, but on the other side, I am horrible at first drafts. I'm a terrible person to be around. I'm not, kudos to my family for putting me. I'm a mess when that first draft is coming out. Every piece of me is exhausted. It's like it's childbirth for as much time as that first draft takes, and then I rewrite the whole darn thing anyway. But I have to get it out, and then I need something to, because I'm a fixer and a player and a smoother. Like the creating the clay is the hard part. The sculpting it for me is the part that I feel much more um, in my zone when I'm doing it. But of course, you can't do one without the other, and good clay always helps. That's kind of my very messy process.
Oh, that's great. That's our writing tip for tonight, folks, from
Yeah.
Sonali, the vomit draft.
The vomit draft. It's so funny because I say word vomit a lot. Like it just sometimes you just have to get something, you'd say it, and it's like word vomit draft. So gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. You turn off your editor and just let that magic just come out, and it's very ugly and messy and stinky, and then you have to find the pieces.
It's still magic.
I love that.
Well, on that note, could you tell us what you're currently working on?
Yes, I have. I don't have a date yet, but I just sent off about a week ago. I sent off my copy edits for the next one, and it's called. I actually, shared the title for the first time on my Friends in Fiction chat with the ladies. It's called
Yes.
Lies and Other Love Languages. So it's very different from this one, in that it's a little bit more, I don't know if it's heavy. It's a little less laugh out loud funny. There's still some amount of, there's a big fat Indian wedding with, two competing sisters-in-law whose sons are getting married in LA, and they're both terrible dancers. And a lot of the theme is, one of the protagonists is a choreographer. And so it's, there's a lot of this wedding wars in the background, but the story really is about about a really close best friendship between two women that breaks up over a surrogacy arrangement. And so 27 years later, so there is a friend who gives that, there's that thing that happens between these friends, and they haven't talked in 27 years. And the 27-year-old daughter figures out something is off through a DNA test, and then kind of this whole unraveling of what happened 27 years ago.
Wow. DNA tests have changed.
Oh yeah.
A lot of things.
Yes.
Oh wow.
No more secrets. Yeah, it's harder.
Yeah, it's harder to keep keep secrets. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm excited that one's coming up. Would you mind sharing with us what you're reading that you're liking right now?
I'm actually reading Heather Webb's upcoming novel, but I don't think we can talk like really upcoming, not just upcoming.
Oh.
But I am doing some research for I just finished Christie's book, as I said, and really, enjoyed it and loved escaping to my own childhood through it. But I'm reading, I'm hoping to write something I can't still talk about that has a large historical component, because it is it's a historical figure coming back to life in today's day in ways that I can't talk about right now. But so I'm doing a lot of reading up on on her life, and I'm reading a book that is, if I tell you what the book is, you'll know what my book is, and so I can't. But I'm doing a lot of that.
We tried, guys. We tried.
I know we did.
Well,
we like to get scoops.
We like to get the scoops.
Scoops. You'll get it. I'll come back to you with it.
We can't wait. Do you have any events or anything coming up that our members can watch or come see you?
Absolutely. If you're in the Chicago area, I'm actually going back early for this. Melanie Johnson's Too Wrong to Be Right, a rom-com, is coming out on the 4th of March, and I'm doing her launch party with her at Love Sweet Arrow in Chicago. So that's the first thing. I will be at Book Bonanza. I am going to be at the Surrey Writers Conference in Canada, in Surrey, Canada,
Nice.
in October. I need to update my appearances on my website, but that's the, give me another few days and I'll update it. But it usually is, and if you sign up for my newsletter, of course, all of this is always on there. But I'm excited about Book Bonanza. That's the next big one.
That's exciting. And I love that her launch is in Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago, so that's my hometown. So
Yep, and
we have
that's the next book I'll read too. Too Wrong to Be Right. So, I'm excited.
very cool. A bunch of our members would like to know, where can they purchase a signed book from you, or if there's a indie bookstore that has signed copies of your books.
Yes, absolutely. My favorite question. So Anderson's Bookshop in Naperville, and the link is on my Instagram bio. It's on my website. That has Anderson's Bookshop has all my books, signed copies of all my books. You can order. Love Sweet Arrow has almost all of them too. I think so. Both those indies have all my books signed. And yes, please order signed copies. Love Sweet Arrow, I know that I can personalize. I think Anderson's also I can, if you put a note in there, because I live 5 minutes from it and I love them and I kind of live there. So yes, if you with the personalized thing, if you make sure you call them and talk to them and you let them know Love Sweet Arrow or Anderson's Bookshop both have signed copies.
Yay. Thank you so much. I know a lot of our members are interested in that. So that question came up quite a few times. So thank you so much.
Well, Sonali, I cannot believe it, but our hour has flown by. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being with us tonight, and in your case this morning. And again, thank you so much for being there so early in the morning for you. And it's just been a pleasure to talk about The Vibrant Years. Such a wonderful book.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We are so thrilled, and you are such an inspiration to so many. And our chat is full of love for you and hearts. And we're just so thankful that you took the time to speak with us. And congratulations on all of your success and for opening the doors for so many opportunities for so many other people.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. I'm incredibly excited to be here. I will go on Facebook and I can. So if you missed questions and I didn't get to your question, I'll answer them in the chat. I might take a little nap before I do it, but
Yes,
I'll get to it. I may not.
Okay.
But thank you so much for everyone who's read, and thanks for the support. It's great work that you do. We couldn't do this without you. So Brenda, Lisa, and everybody who reads, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Sonali. Get that nap.
Bye. Yeah, enjoy your morning.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good morning. Bye.
Oh,
she's a dream.
She is. And the novel was so, I don't know, clever and yet hysterical at the same time. I mean,
so funny. And just the whole aspect of, the female empowerment and the different multi-generational, like the family aspect and the 3 strong women. And I love her so much. And I felt like I was just in awe the whole time, just like,
I know.
I'm so
and the other funny, I am too. And of course, when we scheduled it, we didn't know it would be, I don't think she knew either that it would be 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
There. But, such a dream. And she was a good sport. One thing I
5:30
wanted to,
a.m. in India. So this is our
I
second
know,
international Zoom, and it was successful.
right. That's right. And
Yay.
you know what? I didn't feel the lag any more than it normally is.
No,
So
not at all. Not at all.
that's kind of crazy to me.
And I want to say hi to Ron Block and hi to Kimberly Brock. I saw that you guys are watching live. So
Block and
thank you
Brock.
for tuning in. Ron Block, our fabulous happy hour co-host,
That's
podcast
right.
extraordinaire.
And speaking of such things, I did want to make an announcement about our next book club session so that those who are tuning in tonight will be sure to have that. Our next book discussion will be March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern with Sadiqa Johnson and the House of Eve. I
Yay.
cannot wait.
I am so
That one's going to be
excited.
awesome too.
I'm so excited. Our members are excited too. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's just been an exciting year. I don't know. And then also, I'd like to mention that if you've been following along our reading challenge, we have a few more days left of February, so it's not too late to pick up a book by a person of color. Which, if you are participating tonight and you're watching this, you've already done that, but you can still do another one,
You can do
and
more.
you can do more. And our prompt for March coming up is a cozy mystery. And I know our reading challenge guru, Anissa, is going to be posting some recommendations for that later this week. So you can look out for those. I like a good cozy mystery. And then, there's the whole what makes it a cozy mystery versus a mystery conversation, and what's considered a cozy mystery. And I think for me, cozy mysteries like equal like Hallmark movies and mysteries. It's like more G-rated, it's less language, less graphic details of the murder. So less violence,
Yes.
less graphic details, language, no sexual nature, which a lot of mysteries don't really have that, but some do. It's more of like a G or PG rated mystery. So you still get the fun of the mystery, but you don't have the graphic details that might stick with you. I think that's for some people that might help you figure it out. But I think that's kind of the definition.
I would totally agree, Lisa. I mean, to me, it's a whole different read to have the cozy mystery because the focus is not on the details of what happened. The focus is on the story and
Right.
and the unraveling. And it is definitely more I was going to say rated. But it boils down to a cozy mystery for the reading challenge is whatever you think a cozy mystery is. I mean, we're not
Right.
the reading police. So what in your definition is a cozy mystery, that's what you should read.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
this has
I
been a
am
great
just,
night.
it has. I'm just so thrilled. And thanks everybody for watching. We had a fabulous time with Sonali and I laughed so much. I couldn't believe it. So everyone take care and happy reading.
Yep.
Lisa,
PB&J out.
there you go. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.